The NFL draft is nearly upon us, and we've got 5 questions that Chiefs fans want answers for before things get underway next week.
Hey, what's good, y'all? It's your boy JD6 here with my man. Shout out to KC Sports Authority. Make sure y'all go check that podcast out, man.
You heard the man.
And welcome into the KC Sports Authority podcast. He's Christopher Tenpenny. I'm Keegan Russell, and you are watching us over here on YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button below. Thank you to our many subscribers out there and to all of you that hit us up every single week for all the content we have. We appreciate that. You can also give us a follow over on Spotify if you like to listen on the go. Follow the podcast there. Give us a 5-star review. We'd appreciate that. And of course, make sure you are following us on all of our social media handles below there on the screen at KCSA Pod. Well, Chris, we are less than a week away from the 2025 NFL Draft. And despite the fact that basketball season is coming to an end, the MLB is up and running, football is still going to be the king of sports because the NFL Draft is probably the biggest sporting event over the summer, I would say, in regards to what goes down. And I'm looking forward to it. This is a different kind of draft this year for the Chiefs, not a year where we go in saying that we absolutely have to have this coming out of the draft because we've got a lot of options. The offseason's gone fairly well, all things considered. We don't have any, massive improvements across the board in some of these positions, but the Chiefs are one of the few teams entering this draft that just don't have absolute glaring needs that they have to come away with draft picks. So got to feel pretty good about that so far, right?
Yeah, and they're just running it back. That's why it's like they just, and even with bringing back the safety. Of course, now I'm blanking on it. He's
Mike
2
Edwards.
years removed. Mike Edwards. So I was like, even the guys that weren't on the team last year have played for the Chiefs before, and so yeah, not a lot of needs right now.
That's a good spot, which means we've got 5 questions here that I'm going to throw your way for us and for Chiefs fans to get some questions ahead of the draft answered as far as what we think the Chiefs might end up doing in this draft. So, Chris, let's start off with this first question I got for you. What is the biggest draft need? This could be position. This could be overall results. Where do you want to take this?
I think it has to be defensive line, and I really don't even think it's close. I know the offensive line gets talked about so much, but as far as the options, they're pretty much cemented. Now, if they go first round offensive lineman, like it's not going to be a bad thing, especially with Juwan Taylor's contract coming up after this year, looking for the future, having a good competition. Like, I'm not saying they can't draft an offensive lineman, but if you're just going on the one position that is the closest thing to a team need, it's defensive line. They need some depth. They need some more security. There's some guys that, our contracts are coming up with Karlaftis, like FAU not panning out so far. Like, they need some guys, and I think defensive line is where that has to be the focus.
Yeah, it's definitely a position group where you feel pretty decent about where they are for this upcoming season. But down the road, I mean, you're into another year of the Chris Jones extension, whether you keep him, trade him, move him, whatever, renegotiate. There's not a lot of those guys on the roster currently that are a part of the 2026 team so far. And of course, you got George Karlaftis extension up there. So yeah, I think I'm mostly with you there. I think to me, the answer to this question, which is going to come up in a variation of a question here down the road, but is this draft about this year or is this draft about drafting for the future? And I think to me, that's my biggest question that's in this biggest draft need is what does Brett Veach and Andy Reid want to do? What's the mindset going into the draft? Is it drafting for now? Because if it's drafting for now, I think there's a different strategy as far as who they go after with the first selection in the draft. If it's drafting for the future, then that really opens the door to a lot of different positions. Which again, that's kind of, I mean, it's frustrating that there's a lot of doors open for them to go through, which I think all of it will depend on how the draft board shakes up. But biggest draft need, I think a lot of Chiefs fans are very split on this. It's defensive line, it's offensive line. And there's not a lot of fans that have real confidence in Juwan Taylor with Kingsley potentially being the starting left guard, with Jalen Moore having no previous knowledge of him. So I could see how a lot of fans might be very split here and say, hey, well, maybe it's the offensive line.
Well, and like the thing is too is if you're talking first round pick, there's a conversation to be had. But if you're just talking about what they need to come away from the entire draft with their first 4 picks, first 5 picks, they have to probably come out with 2 defensive linemen. If that means that they're taking one in the second and one with one of the thirds or whatnot, that's fine. But like that is, I just don't even really see the argument just because of the bodies. There's already enough bodies on the offensive line outside of maybe adding one more. So
Yeah.
that's like
Yep.
not
I'm with
even
you
a
there.
debate to me.
So then that leads us perfectly into question number 2. The Chiefs sit at 31, the second to last pick in the first round. So if you're the Chiefs, do we trade up or do we trade down?
The the obvious answer is you want to trade back. You want to trade out of the first round, especially if you're under like what we've both said, defensive line. Like this draft is so loaded with defensive linemen that if you can trade out, you can probably get a very similar prospect on the defensive line that you could get at 31 and grab another pick or two on the way. The issue is there has to be a trade partner. There has to be someone
Yep.
to get into the first round. And I just don't really see any of those players. I mean, the Ole Miss Dart is the only guy that, like, if he falls, there people aren't going to get desperate with the quarterback. Milrow, like those are the quarterbacks are the only ones I could see if they're still both on the board, which I think they should be. Now, will they? I don't know, but I think they should be both on the board by then. If a team's desperate enough to go get them, that's the only way I could see the Chiefs trading out of the first, even though that's what I think they would like to do.
Yeah. Now we've seen Veach trade up before. We've seen him trade back before. We've seen them stay at their spot. I think again, this draft could be very interesting. A lot of the experts and the analysts out there say outside of maybe 3 to 5 players, there's not as many stars in this draft class, but there's a lot of depth top to bottom. That they say, Veach says it every year. Oh, the third round's his sweet spot of where they really find guys. But a lot of the experts are out there saying that the second, third, and fourth round, there's a lot of guys that are going to get drafted in positions that you're going to go, man, this guy could be a top 20 player in this draft class. You're going to get guys in the fourth round that probably could have been a first to second round grade. So this class is very deep. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see what the Chiefs do. I think if they do want to go after that offensive lineman that they really like, there's a decent chance they might have to trade up a few spots because there's not as many on the O-line that are considered surefire prospects. So they might have to trade up 4 or 5 spots to get an offensive lineman. I don't think Josh Simmons is going to completely slide all the way down to them at 31. I think, obviously they hosted him this last week and they like him, but they got to move up if they're getting an offensive tackle, which to me suggests that they're going to trade down, like you said, and covet that extra draft pick or 2 draft picks if you got the right team that wants to move up 4 or 5 spots to get their guy. But yeah, if you were betting this right now, I would lean towards Chiefs trade out of the first round and pick up, another second round pick or maybe a second and a fifth or something like that.
Right, exactly. Yeah. That's what they need to do.
So if they stay there, though, if the Chiefs stay at 31, you've got the option of O-line, D-line, or in this scenario, I'm going to say wide receiver, tight end, a pass-catching option for Mahomes. Where would you go if the Chiefs stay in the first round, and who do you like here?
I'm going to sound like a broken record, but defensive line, like just give me a defensive lineman. Again, if the board falls away, you can talk me into an offensive lineman because I think the team is deep enough and set up enough to where adding someone that if more doesn't work out or for Juwan Taylor or just as a competition, like all of that makes sense to me if you want to go offensive lineman. But I think just the smartest move that's going to help this team the most this year in 2025 is taking a defensive lineman.
Yeah, I feel pretty confident with you there. The same thing. I think that this draft class is just so interesting. You don't have as much depth at the top end wide receivers as you've had in years past. So the guy you could get at 31 might be similar enough to the guy you could get late in the second round. So unless, Luther Burden falls to write them around there, I know some places have him listed in the second round. I think he's all over the place, but a lot of Chiefs fans would like that. Matthew Golden, I don't think he would slide anywhere close to that far. I think he goes top 20, but Matthew Golden's been linked to the Chiefs. Isaiah Bond, you could probably get later. Again, I think you're right on the money there. If they stay here, it definitely feels like it's defensive line, tackle, or edge, because the other guys that they could get, they might be able to get someone similar enough in the second round. So why not just go with the best available, which could be a defensive lineman?
And the Scorton kid out at A&M is a dog. Like I know we're not really picking actual players. If you had me pick an actual, and that's who I want. I think he's I think he's physically a freak. I know the stats don't jump out at you, but he's an SEC DN. Like he's a guy that I think could come in, and he doesn't have to be the guy. He just has to be, the third or fourth option really, and I think I think he would play well on
Yeah,
this.
and a lot of places have skirting late in the second round, so
Right,
maybe the
right.
Chiefs,
That's why they need to trade
because
out of
they
it.
have the luxury, if they don't trade back, they could take a guy early or
The
just
only
move back 10
the only
spots.
thing that scares me, like if the Chiefs feel the way about Nick that I do, the only thing that scares me is Philly probably has him circled as well, and so I don't know if he gets
Like,
past
they need
Philly.
another defensive lineman
But
out there.
but it's what they do.
It
They
is.
take the trenches, and I mean that's kind of where the way they're set up right now. Is I bet you Philly takes offensive defensive lineman. I just don't know who, but
Would you take Luther Burden at 31 if he's there?
yeah, probably. I think he's just too much of a talent. Like I don't really want to. Again,
Sure. Is he?
I'm pretty
I
hell
keep
bent.
going back and forth on.
I'm
Is
pretty
it a
hell bent
need
on
for
what I
this year,
want.
or are you drafting for future? If you're drafting for future, I you could take Burden because you got a couple contracts coming up, so you might not be
Y-
able to pay everybody. So you might as well
Right.
have more options at wide receiver.
That's the thing about the draft is like again we both keep hammering D line, D line, D line, but again they're set up in such a way that really whatever they take, I'm probably going to be able to be okay with it. You know, outside of like running back or whatnot, but like whatever they take, I'll probably like. I'm not going to be up in arms or pissed off about how I know probably half of you are if they don't take the position you want. But Luther Burden would be really hard to pass up on.
Yeah.
It just depends on who's on the board, but like the talent is incredible.
Yeah, you can already picture him in
Oh
this
my gosh.
trio with Worthy and Rice. And who do you cover if that's the three guys you're throwing out there? Plus
Right.
Hollywood Brown on
And
the
Hollywood,
outside.
yeah.
So we're moving along through this pretty quick, but let's get into question number 4. We absolutely know that the Chiefs have a relatively full running back room already, but we know they're going to draft a running back. It's what they do. They always go and find somebody. So this is kind of a two-parter, but the real question is, who's your favorite running back prospect in this draft class that is a realistic option for the Chiefs?
I think the only one that's not like realistic is Genty. Um, doesn't mean that would be a good pick to take some of the other guys because my favorite guy is Henderson, you know, out of Ohio State. I think he's going to be awesome. The issue is he's kind of been slowly moving up the board. It's like every other week, it's like, okay, he's going to be early third. Now he's going to be mid second. Now all of a sudden, it's like he could be in the top 20, top 25 picks if the right team sees it. So I don't know how much I want the Chiefs to take him then, but he is my favorite. Guys that they could take later, I think Alfred Blue has shown some things. I also like you know how like we talked about with Luther Burden. How would it not be cool to take Devin Neal? I don't
Oh
know
yeah.
if he really fits exactly what the Chiefs need. I don't know if he's explosive enough, but just like when you have half the fan base already cheering for you when you walk in the doors, like that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I would love to see it as a Chiefs fan, of course, and a KU fan. Would love to
Right.
see Devin Neal. We did it with FAU 2 years ago, drafting the hometown kid.
Yeah, we
Let's
did
do it
Nick
again.
Bolton, we did FAU. Now it's Devin Neal. Like you
Just
know, we'll
not
just
not
have
DJ Giddens.
yeah.
Can't go K State. It's got to be a KU guy.
I wouldn't
I
hate
should
him
have thrown
either.
that in
I
here. Over under how many KU players the Chiefs draft at 0.5.
yeah,
They
right.
got
I
like
mean,
5 options, but yeah,
I
Devin
mean,
Neal would be great.
all
I,
four of the KU players are going to be taken are at a position that the Chiefs like to add
Chiefs
depth
could
to.
use. Yep.
So
I do think Logan Brown at offensive tackle is an interesting one they could go for. And I also think
late, yeah,
Mello Dotson could be one to look at. But
right.
yeah, I would love Devin Neal. Again, I think the Chiefs are in a nice position here with running back. You know they're going to take one. There's a lot of really good running backs in this draft class.
Right.
Omari and Hampton has really slid up the board. He was, projected third, fourth round running back. Now he's kind of solidified himself as the number 2 running back in this class. Some people has him as high of like 22, 23, 24, kind of like with Henderson, but most places have him in a second round. Quinshon Judkins is the other one we've seen mocked to the Chiefs quite a bit out of Ohio State.
He's
Bigger
just not
running back, good
explosive.
size. But yeah,
Or
not type. That's why, like, again, all the fans I've seen are excited about these guys. But have you ever seen Andy Reid draft that type of player?
the
You
thing
know
is,
what type of running
Judkins
back
is
he likes.
the thing with Judkins is like the speed isn't there, but yet the explosiveness is. Like he will get talked about how he's not explosive, but he runs like he is. So I don't know. I could see it. And then Scattaboo's another guy that people are so down on, myself included, for the Chiefs is because of his 40 time. But at the same time, it's like sometimes if you're just a good football player, you're a
Yeah.
good football player. It doesn't really matter.
Which means the Chiefs won't draft any of those guys. They'll go number 20 in the draft class of running backs. They'll go Marcus Yarns out of Delaware,
Probably Andy
or they will
Washington,
go
some Monday,
Corey
Tuesday
Kiner
night.
out of Cincinnati, because
Yeah,
they just don't draft the biggest names. They draft guys that you're like, again, Kareem Hunt was on, I don't think any real Chiefs
yeah,
fan at the time had Kareem Hunt on their draft board as a running back that they wanted. Clyde Edwards-Helaire made obvious sense because of the way his senior year went at LSU. Isaiah Pacheco, I don't think any of us really had him truly on our board. The Chiefs do not draft well-known running backs. They draft the guys that they love they love the tape on, and you could just see like that's why I think Cam Scadaboo is probably the biggest name on there that the tape just matches up with what the Chiefs like. But
yeah. It'll be
yeah,
fun to
lot
watch.
lot of depth in this class for running backs, so they're going to
It
come away with at least one pretty solid guy.
position players or like offensive weapons and DNs is the most exciting things to draft, and that's Chiefs are probably going to take at least 3 or 4 of those
Yeah.
kind of players this draft. So
All right, moving along to our last one. Brett Veach has also been very good at finding quality talent, not just higher in the draft, but later in the draft too. So my next and final question, as far as the Chiefs draft edition goes, is over under 2.5 starters out of this draft class. Now it doesn't
like
have to be day one starters, but 2.5 guys that they pull out of this draft class that become consistent starters.
I think it's obviously under. Like I know that their Veach does a great job, and normally he hits the over, hits at least 2, or I just like even if they take Luther Burden, if he falls and they take him, like he's not going to end the year as a starter unless 2 injuries happen,
Sure.
beforehand. If they take a tight end, it's not like that. They could be a productive player, but he'll be third on the depth chart unless an injury happens. Same with corner, same with the end. Like I think even running back, like unless Pacheco gets hurt, like I don't think anyone's taking the job from him like he did to Clyde his rookie year. I think it will be more split where Pacheco's still the starter. So
Sure.
I don't think there's the opportunities. Now that doesn't mean they won't be impact players. I think that they do a very good job of that, but I don't think any of them are going to be coming out of the tunnel this year.
So then over under same question, but 3 years from now from the same draft class.
Then I would take the over because I think they're going to have a running back that they're going to want in 2 or 3 years, or one of the defensive linemen, and then probably whoever they pick as their safety or corner depth, will or a linebacker depth with their late 4th or package. They'll package their 7ths to get like early 6th rounder or something, and they'll take a linebacker that's on special teams, and in 3 years from now he'll be a starter. Like that's
See,
just how each
I'm
operates.
going to go the over on this just
Yeah.
because of if I'm not just limited to this year. Like,
Yeah.
let's just say the next 2 years, 2.5 starters. I think if I put this at 3.5, I'd take the under, but I think I would take the over. I feel like they're going to get a linebacker out of this draft class that is going to sneak his way up the board and is going to sneak himself up into the starting position next year. And then I also feel like there's a defensive lineman in here that they're going to like. I don't feel that confident with the O-line picks necessarily panning out just where we're sitting. Now, that doesn't mean they couldn't get somebody because Jawan Taylor's contract, every single Chiefs fan wants that off the books right now. And every single Chiefs fan would love to see him go. But you got one more full year of him. So I wouldn't be shocked if they do find a tackle that could compete for that starting spot on the outside. But those were the 5 biggest questions I had laid out for us ahead of the Chiefs draft. Does it mean there's the only questions? No, there's plenty of stuff we could get into. We're not going to spend as much time diving into that. I just want to do some of the overarching stuff. But Chris, I thought it would be fun to kind of end this with a little bonus challenge for you to test some of your Chiefs knowledge. There are 19.
Put me on the spot, huh?
Putting you on the spot here. There are 19 former first-round draft picks of the Kansas City Chiefs dating back to 2003. I'll give you 2 options. Name all 19 of them, or we just see how many of the 19 you can get in less than 2 minutes.
So rephrase the question one more time. There's 19. They've
19.
drafted a
They've
first
drafted
round.
19 guys in the first round since 2003.
Okay.
Actually, let me just make sure I have that in my notes right before I tell you the wrong answer. Yes, since 2003. 19 first round picks since 2003. How many of those 19 do you think you can name in less than 2 minutes?
I don't know. Over half, 12, 13. I don't know. We'll see.
Let's give it a shot. I'm going to set a timer here on my phone. You got 19 draft picks since 2003. The Chiefs have drafted in the first round. How many can you name in less than 2 minutes? Go.
Okay. So last year, Xavier Worthy, FAU, and then George Karlaftis and McDuffie. Nick Bolton was a second. I don't think they had. So Clyde. Breland Speaks was not a first rounder. He was a second rounder. So is it Mahomes the next one if we're working backwards?
Mhm.
Chris Jones was a second rounder. 15. Who was it in 15? Marcus Peters was in there. Eric Fisher's in there. Dontari Poe's in there. My favorite, Jonathan Baldwin's in there. Okay, that's 2011. Now
You got
Eric
one more.
Berry.
You're missing one more up to 2011. Very
Okay.
famous defensive misplay.
Okay. D Ford. I
Yep.
kind of group him with Chris Jones and Breland Speaks as far as second rounders. Okay. Thanks for the hint there. So 2010's Barry. 2000 or it's 2009 Barry.
2010 was Eric Berry.
Okay, 2009. So there's Tyson Jackson and Glenn Dorsey. Fun fact: I have a Glenn Dorsey signed LSU Sports Illustrated. He's on the front after they won
Nice.
the national, and I went to training camp and got Glenn Dorsey's autograph.
You got 2009 Tyson Jackson. Glenn Dorsey was 2008.
2008.
He had another teammate drafted in that same first round with him in 2008.
Brandon Albert. And then so Tamba and DJ are 06, 05. Who's I'm missing 07, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm missing 04. I don't know if I'm going to get 03, 04. I was 8 and 9. I'm a little too green for.
I honestly did not realize the 2003 guy was a first round pick because we didn't see much of him the first couple of years.
Jared Allen.
And then he exploded for 2 monster seasons with the Chiefs.
Okay. Dwayne Bowe
was 1 and 2. He was the 2007
that I missed. Not the one I exploded. Okay, so I'm missing 2. Have I got
one guy? One guy left.
You
one guy left.
You helped me with
2003,
but and then you're helping me with this last guy. This is the guy that exploded.
He exploded. He had 2 monster seasons for the Chiefs. Set a Chiefs record for. I can't give you I can't tell you that.
You're right.
Way too easy.
Because Larry was a second rounder. Larry Johnson was the first
Larry
rounder.
Johnson, 2003.
I thought he was a second rounder. That's why I wasn't even. He wasn't.
That one surprised me as well.
Wow. Okay.
But yeah, that is all.
That's fun. Like, I think I did a little bit once he started going backwards, and then obviously you're giving me a couple hints. But once I started going backwards, it was like the Derek Johnson draft 05 with Colquitt as well. Like that's like the first draft class I remember like kind of following as a 10-year-old, just getting into sports. Anything
they had a good stretch 2005 to 2008. There was a good stretch of guys. But I've done this one on Sporkle quite a bit. Love Sporkle, doing these sports quizzes. If you go back and try and do all of the Chiefs draft picks since the Andy Reid era is one that's on there, my gosh, that was a challenge. There were guys that I had totally forgotten about that even existed, and then you see it on like, oh yeah, I totally remember watching him play.
Yeah,
but that was a lot of fun. Maybe we'll do some more of that. We'll have to do some Royals editions of this too.
Oh man, that wouldn't even be fair. But is Jared Allen like was he like a second or was he like a fifth?
I think he was
remember
3rd round pick.
I can't remember where he fell in, if he was like a high up guy or if he was just.
He was in the 4th round of the 2000s.
Yeah, he was late. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. I couldn't remember. So.
Yeah, he was one that when I just looked at this at face value, I thought definitely could have been one.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Down. And then, of course, a lot of Chiefs fans would throw out, Chris Jones, Jamal Charles, those types of players because of how big of an impact they've had.
Yeah,
Travis Kelce. But
I remember the Chris Jones trade pretty, and then like Travis was 3rd, Jamal was 3rd, Justin Houston was 3rd. Like they had a role.
They've demolished the 3rd round picks in the last 10 years.
They had like a 6 or 7 year stretch that were like their best player was all.
That'll have to be our next quick clip of who is this year's 3rd round Chiefs.
Yeah.
Whoever.
Yeah, stud breakout.
Yeah, Chiefs 3rd round stud for the Chiefs in this one. But anyway, that'll wrap it up on this one. We got less than a week until the NFL draft. Looking forward to seeing who the Chiefs take. We probably won't have much more between now and then as far as Chiefs goes, but we'll definitely break down some of the post-draft talk, get into some of those guys, and then it's not too far along until we get into rookie training camp and OTAs and all the summer stuff. And then next thing you know, the fall's here and it's another 18-week schedule.
Can't wait, man.
So looking forward to it. Well, again, that'll wrap it up with this one. Make sure you are hitting that like and subscribe button below. If this is the first time you've checked us out, this is the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th time and you haven't done it yet, just smash that subscribe button below. Make sure you're coming back every single week for all of our Chiefs, Royals, and KU content that we get into. We appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you in the next episode.